Welcome to the Big Make Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. It is Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. And I know that I've said through the years that I'm not going to do a lot of basketball shows. This show came together last second, but news warrants it. The Buckeyes reportedly have moved on from head coach Chris Holtmann. This report first noted by Jeff Goodman, the field of 68, longtime name in the industry. So if Jeff Goodman is saying it, that is good enough for me at this point. I will have to do a little bit more digging around to get more information on it. Ohio State dropped a game last night by 8, I believe, in Madison, Wisconsin against the Badgers. Down in the teens, managed to cut back to 5 or 6 and never got any closer as the Buckeyes season continues to woefully underperform. Chris Holtmann out of, from the Buckeyes, according to a report from Jeff Goodman. So let's kind of talk this through again. I think fans had gotten a little tired of Ohio State's wash, rinse, repeat cycle. Ohio State comes out every year, looks really good, wins a couple of games that maybe it shouldn't in November, in December. January happens. The floor drops out. Ohio State, all of the good work that it has done earlier in the year disappears. And then as of late, the Buckeyes miss the NC2A tournament. And we're only a few years removed from the big issue being Ohio State not being able to get into the second weekend of the tournament. Ohio State would win its opening round game and then would fall in the round of 32, generally to a much higher seeded team. Houston 1 year, Gonzaga the other year. I believe those were Boise and Tulsa were the 2 years that that I can think of there. But Ohio State in a unique position right now because Gene Smith is in his final months as Ohio State's athletic director. Ted Carter, brand new university president for the Ohio State University. A lot of people thought that potentially Chris Holtmann might get another year because of this timing. Gene Smith would he wait until the end of the season and then have to make a firing and then hire somebody that he wasn't necessarily going to have to be around for? I don't know. I mean, Ross Bjork is coming in as the new athletic director. You need to kind of you have to kind of figure out what's going on with that. Ross Bjork does start at Ohio State in a consultancy role, I guess, March 1st, and he doesn't take over as AD until July 1st. But I have a feeling that in this consultancy role, just having a hard time tripping all over my words. Haven't even had a day drink yet, I promise. It's just going to be his hire. I mean, because you can still be a consultant and be involved in all this type of stuff. It's Ohio State's own internal workings. How do you kind of go from there? Ben Higgins asking ideas on possible replacements. I think a lot of people want to talk about Pat Kelsey, who was, I guess, at Northern Kentucky before going into the Carolinas somewhere. How about Buzz Williams, a coach that there's familiarity with in terms of Ross Bjork, who's at A&M? What is going to be the case for Ohio State? I don't think we're going to see Ohio State do an internal hire. I don't think we're going to be doing a situation of where Jake Diebler is going to get the job. I don't think that's going to be the case. And sometimes it's just a matter of being too close to the situation. You were here as the boat sank, and even though you didn't drown, we're just not necessarily going to put you in charge of the new boat. So, we're going to have to kind of see where where things go from there. I mean, I actually was getting close to sitting down and starting to put together what we call a coaching hot board. And I think that we're going to have plenty more content coming from all of the fellas at Buckeye Huddle as this news happens. I was just getting off of a show. I had just finished the Mark Rogers show as Tony put in the chat reports that Holtmann has been let go. And I'm like, well, I had to do a show anyway, so let's do this one. So let me get something out of the way too, and our little advertisement here, because the Big Meat Kickoff is brought to you in part by our friends over at No Naturals. And because of that, let's give a little read here. Are you ready for an entirely different edible experience? Welcome to No Naturals, where we're shattering the stereotype of one-note, slow-acting gummies. Forget waiting over an hour to feel the effects. Our gummies are fast. They're fast acting in 15 to 30 minutes. You'd think I'd be better at reading this by now. You're not just choosing a flavor, you're choosing your vibe. With 5 core experiences and 6 custom combos, you're in full control. Whether it's energy and focus without the crash, a peaceful slumber that lasts all night, or a game-changing burst of bliss and euphoria, these edibles are the real deal. And the best part, you don't need a doctor's recommendation. No Natural gummies are dispensary quality and discreetly delivered right to your door. So whether you're craving a productivity boost, a good night's sleep, or some blissful euphoria, say hello to No Naturals. Try them today and use code HUDDLE10 for 10% off your order at shop.nonaturals.com. Know your edibles. Know your experience. No Naturals. And I can tell you that I had a couple last night. Having a hard time unplugging after watching that basketball game, and had a great night's sleep. And here you go. So I'm a believer. I use the product, and I urge everybody to check it out. Down on the scroll is all the information. I will also, after the show is done, put the link with the affiliate code into the show notes. If you're listening on iTunes or one of those, the notes will be in the show notes. So there you go, right there. Let me jump in here. Ohio State at this point has not put out any sort of release. So at this point, this is still a report. But Jeff Goodman generally right on with all of this stuff. So we're going, as we're talking about this being as a report. Let me keep going through here. Brian, Chris Gent, a Buckeye alum and a Lakers assistant, would be a solid choice. Well, here's the thing. Everybody thinks that you have to go and get a former player, whether or not in football. Well, you've got to elevate James Laurinaitis in basketball. Well, you got to give this to Chris Gent or Scooney Penn or somebody like that. What Ohio State has to make a decision what its opinion of basketball is. Are you going to go all in and pay millions and millions and millions of dollars to get a top coach to create a buzz, which doesn't necessarily promise you any sort of a win, to do that? Or do you try to grow a coach? Well, I think that for a lot of people, when Ohio State brought in Chris Holtmann, it was a little underwhelming in terms of, okay, he's had some results. He's been a 2-time in 2 different conferences, 2 different stops, coach of the year. But I don't know if it was an overwhelming type of hire. Now, if you bring in Chris Gent, yes, that's going to excite the fans. You know who doesn't know who Chris Gent is? Recruits. They don't know who he is. I'm 52 years old. I had classes with Chris Gent. So, I know who he is. I like Chris Gent as a person, and I certainly enjoyed seeing him win a ring with Houston and everything else. But what is there to say that is going to be the right decision to merit making a multi-year and multi-million-dollar decision? So I'm not trying to denigrate the suggestion, Brian. Not at all. I just don't necessarily know what the upside is there. Just because it may excite you and it may excite me and maybe it excites Ben Higgins or somebody like that. But I think that having somebody who has more of a name, cachet out there is going to be important because Ohio State's going to have to do a couple of things here. Ohio State is going to have to re-recruit its recruiting class. Ohio State's going to have to re-recruit its roster. Ohio State's going to have to go and really kind of figure out what it's going to do in the portal because there probably will be defections. Because not only do you lose your head coach here, but you're probably going to lose all of your assistants, a couple of your assistants. I mean, if you come in, it's like I'm a Jake Diebler guy. I want to play for Jake Diebler, and Jake Diebler does not survive the culling. Then, what do? Do you follow Jake Diebler to what his next stop is? Do you go to somewhere else? So there's going to be a lot of work here. And I don't know if I'm necessarily feeling that decision. Another name that people have kind of thrown at me more like fans is Greg McDermott. Greg McDermott was a name that came up while Ohio State was in the process of hiring Chris Holtmann. I'm not a huge McDermott fan in terms of how he would fit at Ohio State. I think that we're going to see a list that is pretty far and wide of where things are. And people are going to sit there and say, bring Thad Matta back. He's having success at Butler. But, I think that Butler is the right speed for Thad Matta right now. I mean, he looks great. He doesn't seem to be dealing with a lot of the same ailments to the extent that he was while he was at Ohio State. So I don't know. Let me kind of catch up here because we're falling behind. Maybe somebody will throw some names in there I'm not thinking about. Again, I jumped off of a show, immediately set up this show on the report of Jeff Goodman that Chris Holtmann will no longer be in the employ of The Ohio State University as the Buckeyes look to move on. We are still waiting on official confirmation from Ohio State, but Goodman is really good, especially in this region of having his stuff covered. He would not run with this if it were not the case, and if it ends up not being true, then that's kind of one of those things that's a hard time coming back from. Odysseus says Jay Wright out of retirement. I think Jay Wright left because he didn't like the trajectory of where college sports were going. College sports haven't taken a U-turn and gone back into the right direction. So I don't know. He seems to be happy with his television role. I mean, coaches got to coach, but Jay Wright left at a point of where he was at peace. So I don't know if he's necessarily going to figure that he needs to do that. Senor T says noon at noon Eastern. Yes, I normally don't do a show here because I know another person in this market does a show generally at 12. And I don't want to necessarily get into a shooting war over viewers, but I really should be running my shows at 12, if we're being honest. I really should. But this is special. I'm not saying that I'm not going to do another live show this week because I'm doing live here. I just didn't want to record 20 minutes, turn it around, and everything I recorded in the 20 minutes proves to be dated. So it was just easier to turn this on live. Doug Shepard says hello to Doug. Bruce is talking about Clark Kellogg was a great player. Again, it's just a lot. I mean, to just go in and get the former player and expect that to always work out. Ask the guys up north how things are going with Juwan Howard. I mean, yes, they've had some success here or there, but they're ready to run him out of town on a rail. And then the whole situation with him and the strength and conditioning staff getting into it with Sanderson and everything else, it shows that it doesn't always necessarily work. I mean, it just doesn't. So I don't know if and the thing with Gent is Chris Gent has had a lot of coaching experience via, whether it's been, assistant roles in the NBA or what he's done in the NBDL. This isn't a babe in the woods who, would be coming out and this would be like his second coaching job with like 17 months of experience or anything like that. But I think that if you're going to be serious about competing for Big Ten titles and things of that nature, you need to go out and get a big name. I think that that's what it is because, and that's difficult because Ohio State basketball is always going to be behind Ohio State football. Ohio State basketball could win 6 national championships in a row. And the vast majority of people are going to ask me, when does football practice start? Who do you think is going to be quarterback? So there are going to be some coaches that just disqualify Ohio State based on the makeup of where basketball stands in the pecking order. There are going to be athletes that want to be the big man on campus. Greg Oden was obviously recognized and was a big man on campus, but I think he would be the first one to admit that he was not any bigger than anybody on the football team. And there were people on the football team that were bigger names and bigger draws. And Greg Oden was here a year, and we know that his career didn't necessarily, his playing career was greatly underwhelming due to injuries. And now he's, helping out Thad Matta over at Butler. So, there you go. Sir General 108, Holtmann made a lot of money and got nothing done. I am not here to criticize Chris Holtmann and what may or may not have worked. I know when somebody reportedly gets dumped, it's very instinctual to go in and talk about how they couldn't do this and they couldn't do that. And those articles are coming. But I think that when you look at this from a dispassionate place, that's not necessarily where fans are. Fans are fans because they're fanatics and they're passionate. It's for me to look at this from a place of dispassion. Ohio State did accomplish things under Chris Holtmann. Ohio State won. Chris Holtmann won a Big Ten Coach of the Year award. There were things that were accomplished. If the litmus test is if you don't win a national championship, then you're crap. Only Fred Taylor can sit there and really have any room when it comes to that. Chris Holtmann did come up short in terms of recent seasons getting to the NC2As, things of that nature. Because let's remember, 18 and 19, as we said, they made the tournament. They lost in the round of 32, going against higher seeds. 20, they were going to be in the tournament. That was the COVID year. Everything wiped out. And then they never were really ever able to regain footing, regain traction after that. I think one of the issues that I have had is that there just was no place for a big in Chris Holtmann's system. It's positionless. Well, last night I watched Wisconsin. Wisconsin was able to do a couple of different things. Wisconsin was able to have its big guy go outside the arc and hit threes, and then they were also able to get inside and really affect Ohio State at some points. Ohio State had a lot of dunks in the game early on. Mahaffey was able to get loose a couple times down low, but in the second half, Ohio State did not have that success down low, and Ohio State really even misses somebody like Caleb Wesson. And I just don't know. I don't know why Ohio State has not been able to have more success in recruiting bigs. And that's not taking anything away from Felix Okpara. I like Felix Okpara's game, but he is not going to be – he's not your traditional 5, and he really isn't a traditional 4 either. He's tall, but he's still slight. He's not going to get down there and back you down. He's going to alter your shot and going in the other direction. And then Zed Key reshapes his body, and I think he lost some of what made him Zed Key, and he's largely kind of been a bit of an enigma this year. I don't know what the expectation is there. So Ohio State has gotten itself into a point under Chris Holtmann where if it can't be a shooter's team, they're dead. And I don't know what philosophical changes need to come in. I don't know how Ohio State needs to kind of reshape its roster. I'd like to see more size, bigger bodies, people that can play a little bit more down low. Now, let's be honest. Zach Edey is not a player that is going to work in every system moving forward. But he is a hell of a college player, and he's gonna make some money. Let's not lie. I mean, I will get to your questions and comments here. I know I've gotten off on my own little diatribe here for a bit, but Zach Edey never gets called for a foul somehow. I just don't know how Ohio State has not been able to land traditional centers, and Ohio State still ends up, goes after an Ibrahim Diallo, and that doesn't necessarily work out. You Ohio State can't keep getting project centers and then wonder why Ohio State doesn't have any centers. I think one of the things that is going to be remembered in the Chris Holtmann legacy is that Ohio State was batting about 500, 600 in terms of its transfer portal guys. You have guys that have worked out, but Ohio State has not been able to find the guy that has necessarily come in and just been a monster. I mean, Ohio State certainly has found guys that have, had some success, but that big guy, that big guy in terms of the one that is going to be the difference, really feels like it has eluded them more years than not. So I don't know. I'm trying to keep an eye on Twitter as well, just to see if I get an official report. I mean, we may or may not, in the time that that this show is on. I really had not planned on doing a live show today, as I had mentioned, and I certainly had not planned on doing a show about basketball, because my basketball numbers on shows have not been fantastic, but 175 of you have joined me here. Be sure to hit the thumbs up, like the channel, subscribe. Don't miss a single episode of the Big Me Kickoff or any of the programming here on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Here we go. Ben Fogle, bound to happen. I'm good with it. Now need to make a big splash hire. So, and that's the thing. Who's going to be that big splash hire that, as I said just a few minutes ago, that is okay being in the back seat to football being in the front seat? Because a lot of your big name, your big name coaches are going to want to be the guy. Yes, you can make millions of dollars being a head coach, but there is a lot of crap that you have to deal with. It is not just suits and BMWs and getting out there and looking good on the sidelines. There is a lot of BS that goes into all of that. And to go through all, and there's no less BS just because you are at a school that is a football first school. There may just be less reward or less visibility, because, as I said, I still believe that Ohio State could have a really successful basketball program, and it's still not going to get a quarter of the notoriety, a quarter of the visibility that football is going to get. And that's just what the case is. So, I can't see a situation of where like a John Calipari ends up at Ohio State. I did, and I'm just using him as an example. I just don't think that is in the cards, but you never know. You have a new AD who certainly has other, coaches that he's dealt with and other people that he's dealt with, and has had negotiations with certain agents, and maybe things are different there. I mean, let's be real. Ohio State should have pretty much unlimited resources when it comes to putting together a basketball program. Now, we're seeing all this money going to football NIL. How much money is there for basketball NIL? I don't know. Is Cohesion the third NIL, the one that's kind of more tasked with basketball? What is Cohesion doing at this point? I don't know. Again, we've been on the air for 24 minutes. The Goodman report came out, I think, like 28 minutes ago. I have not had 32 minutes ago. I've not had an opportunity to check this out, start doing some due diligence. We're going to go 30, 35 minutes just to kind of figure it out. As I said, if more news comes out or we recircle, there very well could be another show on this channel, whether or not I'm on it or it's Tom and Tony or whatever. We're going to stay on top of this here at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle and at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Yeah, people are upset that he's going to get, $14 million reportedly, 4 years at $3.5 million. Not a math major, but 3.5 times 2 is 7 times 2 is 14. There's a lot of BS you have to deal with, and I have no problems. If you sign a contract, if I sign a contract with you, I expect the terms of the contract to be lived up to. And now people are like, well, I expect you to win games. Well, that's all well and good, and that's what's determined if you get the next contract or the next contract. But just because everybody's mad at you, that doesn't mean you should not get the money that's coming to you. I mean, if you signed a contract with somebody and they're like, well, I just don't like the way you went about doing business, so I'm just going to void this contract and you get nothing. And at the end of the day, Ohio State can pass a hat around and pay that off. It's not like a bunch of kids aren't going to be able to come to Ohio State on an academic scholarship. It's not like a building is going to be left vacant because Ohio State has to pay $14 million out. Ohio State is not Maryland before it joined the Big Ten, where it was looking at having to cut sports. Ohio State is not UCLA right now, which has a major shortfall in terms of where its giving dollars are. It'll be fine. Gary says, hate to see anybody get fired, but it's time. I think this year I finally just got to the point of saying, if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. I like Chris. I have not covered the team nearly as closely as Tony has. I kind of saw this year falling apart. I'm not even going to go through the efforts at this point. So Chris will land on his feet just based on the $14 million that he's still owed. I think any of us would do just fine with it. I'm not saying that in order, jealousy or envy or anything like that. It just is what it is. He'll be fine. His family will be fine. And it's par for the course. I mean, it happens. We're not in a day and age where somebody is going to be at one program for 30 years and leave on their own terms. That's just not how it works. A lot of coaches don't leave on their own terms, and those few that do are called Hall of Famers, the Coach K's of the world and guys like that. Most coaches do not get to decide their expiration date when it comes to coaching. Let's go here. Neil Harris, I think, is talking about Pat Kelsey. Rick S. And again, I've fallen way behind, so these are things I was probably talking about 15 minutes ago. Just kind of how this goes. We need to recruit big men. Wisconsin last night pounded us inside the paint. Only 2 free throw attempts. That indicates a soft, passive approach to basketball. We should never lose games like that. Well, I hear you with never. You're going to drop some of those. Again, Zach Edey is just a horrible matchup for so many teams, and it's just going to be difficult. But, with that being said, Ohio State just did not have it last night to be able to beat Wisconsin. I'm reading somebody's list that they just have here. I don't even know who they are. They're just they got like 50,000 followers. There's Greg McDermott, Sean Miller, Nate Oates. I don't see how Ohio State gets Nate Oates away from Alabama. Lamont Paris, Dusty May, Mick Cronin. That would be something if we're Mick Cronin from UCLA. If Ohio State ends up pilfering both UCLA head coaches, that would be interesting. Porter Moser. So, it would be interesting. My phone is just blowing up. Everybody, did you see that Chris Holtmann is out? Yes, I did. That is my job. Gary asking, do players have a portal? Yes, they do. All athletes have a portal. This is not just a football situation. Obviously, everybody would finish out the year, and then you got to figure it out. So you got to – what is the timeline that you make here? A lot of people have jobs. You're not going to be able to pull somebody out of who's got a job and be like, okay, well, we want to name you right now in order to save our recruiting and kill your recruiting. So I think you're going to have to kind of wait a little bit for Ohio State to be able to make a hire. But I think you also need to show your guys that you're making the best effort. So this is a big recruiting job for the remaining coaches, for Gene Smith in a certain extent, Ross Bjork, to be able to figure it out. And of course, there are going to be people who are going to say, well, these are the guys that ended up getting Chris Holtmann fired in the first place. Everybody, you can fire the coach. It's a lot harder to fire the players. And I think that Ohio State does have the pieces. I don't have an issue largely with Chris Holtmann's recruiting. I have an issue with the lack of recruiting bigs. I don't think it was a case of Ohio State just never recruited bigs, but I think it became a proof of performance situation. How do you recruit bigs without having bigs showing a track record? And how do you get a track record of bigs doing stuff without recruiting bigs? So you're kind of caught in this position of where it becomes difficult. But I do, as I said earlier, I do think Ohio State has had probably some really bad misses in terms of portal recruiting. And no, I'm not going to name names. It's just not right. It's not fair to do that on my part. I mean, and honestly, I go to basketball media every day, and I go or every year, and I talk to these kids and find out interesting personal stories from them. And you root for them as much as you can as a reporter. I mean, you can't interject yourself into the story. That's not right. But, it's like, hey, this kid had a really unique upbringing, blah, 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 blah. I hope he does well and is able to, provide for himself and his family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let me go through here. Jordan Kapler, Kevin Noon, head basketball coach, has a nice ring to it. You could promote Tony to ball boy or Tom to ball boy. I was never a basketball player. I did play intramurals when I was at Ohio State. I had more fouls than points. I am not the guy that you want as a basketball coach. I could probably hold my own a little bit better on the football side of things. But no to the basketball side of things. Let me keep going through here. Ben wants to bring in Anthony Grant from down the street at Dayton. Certainly a name there. I don't follow UD basketball. I have a couple of friends that are huge UD fans, and they whip the ever-living crap out of me with UD stuff. So I've kind of developed a blind spot for UD for my own protection. So, and Greg, if you're watching, hi, but I think you're probably working right now. My wife is coming back to Columbus today, and she just said that the flight right next to her flight is going to Columbus, and the flight next to her is going to Cancun. So I told her to make sure to get on the right flight, and she's like, Cancun? I said, only if you send me a ticket. Frank Carone says, hope you have a great day. I hope you are too. Doug says that I'm a favorite media guy, just real. Well, that's the thing. And Tom and Tony and Mark, I think all of our staff does a really good job of trying to just be real, for lack of a better descriptor there. And it's not a case of where I think anybody else is trying to push a narrative or whatever. I'm going to tell you what I think. And especially with me having to be on 3 days a week now, I have less time to sit there and craft the perfect show. So you're just going to get a download of my thoughts. And sometimes they may make sense and sometimes they may not. And, we'll just kind of see from there. Let me keep going through. There's going to be some questions that I'm going to skip over, or comments, because just how it is. David saying ESPN just reported Holtmann out. I haven't seen it, just to see if them or Sports Illustrated are necessarily using the Jeff Goodman report or not. I have not had an opportunity to look at this point. Again, it just kind of comes down to when I'm on the air, I'm not necessarily on social. I've not been able to check out, what is going on. All right, Clay Hall of WSYX, who was my first boss in television, is reporting that he has confirmation on this. After 7 seasons, Chris Holtmann has been let go as Ohio State's basketball coach. A new coaching search, I'm sure, is underway right now. But again, unless there's a coach who is sitting around doing nothing, and somebody brought up Jay Wright earlier, I don't know how you bring in anybody at this point. But this gives Ohio State a head start on a lot of people. There are a lot of Big Ten coaches that could be gone at the end of this year, including Juwan Howard, Mike Woodson, some others. There have been some woefully underperforming Big Ten teams this season, and this puts Ohio State in a position to start making early contact with representatives, kind of figure out what it is it wants, who it could potentially get after. I mean, I think that the question has been asked, why now? Well, I don't know if you could necessarily have done it earlier, because the thing too is I think that in terms of letting a coach go, you have to show potential replacements, that you gave this coach every opportunity, that you are not being unfair to the coach, because if they take the job, then they're going to be under your directives, and if you burn this guy, you may burn them. So I think it's important there, but I think that Ohio State really did not need to continue down this path the remainder of the season. The year is lost. Could Ohio State go nuts and win the Big Ten tournament and force its way into the NC2A tournament? Sure. I could also sneeze out gold bullion. It's just probably neither going to happen. It's just not how things are shaped up. So make the move, kind of assess what you have, and see what's in store for 24-25. I mean, I'm going to be really interested in seeing how they, what happens with the signing class. I mean, that Ohio State signed at signing day, and I'm pulling up that list right now, or where things are. I mean, actually, are they even signed? I mean, I don't, they've got, for the class of 24, they got a pair of players with Colin White out of Ottawa, Ohio, and then John Mobley, who's in Utah right now. I mean, but not the deepest class in the world, but two very good players. But once again, we're talking about a class that has, that is a guard and a forward. I mean, nobody over 6'5". Once again, Ohio State doesn't have a big in that class. Ohio State seems doomed to be that type of guy. Do you go and find a guy who just happens to have a big on his roster that maybe he brings with him, so you have some proof of performance that you can run with a big? So I don't know. Let me keep going through here. There are some people who are just very excited. I am not going to sit there and use this as a bully pulpit to bash Chris Holtmann. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to be at any more press conferences, to my knowledge, where Chris Holtmann is going to be at, or anything like that. I'm not worried about getting a phone call or anything else, but it's over and done with. Saying, well, he did this and he did that, and it serves no purpose. We are here to report the story. Chris Holtmann is out, and we're here to advance the story. Where does Ohio State go next? Again, we've been on the air for 38 minutes. I've had zero time to really give this a lot of thought. I've had zero time to talk to a couple of support staff that I know and other teams and things like that, to kind of see names that they think that could fit. All of that is coming, but sometimes the goal is to get out there first and be able to give your initial thoughts on it. And that's what this conversation is. These are initial thoughts on the situation. Let everybody kind of talk about it. So let's just keep scrolling down here. I'm just looking as I'm getting text messages and everything else. This is just a lot is going on. Doug Shepard, I will give them the same results Holtmann did for half the money. I deal with my a-hole brother. I could handle it. There you go. RM saying all the national outlets are reporting it. Granted, these comments are 14 minutes old compared to where we are now. I just can't watch Twitter and the chat and look at my beautiful unshaven face on the show all at the same time. Something's got to give. Twitter is what I'm not watching right now, so I can do everything else. Let me just keep scrolling. Again, we're probably going to fall way behind, and I'm not just I'm just not going to be able to get everything out. I mean, people are saying Chris Gent. Why? I like Chris Gent. Again, we had classes together. We're the same age. We were at Ohio State, obviously, at the same time. But why Chris Gent? Because he was a Buckeye? Is he going to be a big enough name to lure recruits. If Ohio State couldn't land Bronny in the first case, and Chris Gent is close with LeBron, that's not going to bring Bronny to Ohio State. Probably not going to bring the younger son to Ohio State at this point. I don't know if as I said, I'm 52 years old. I remember Chris Gent as a player. Joey basketball player who's 16 doesn't know who the hell Chris Gent is. So it's certainly not a big splash hire. They went out and got somebody from the NBA. Okay. They didn't go out and get Greg Popovich. They didn't go out and get Steve Kerr. They didn't go get Phil Jackson. I mean, it's the same situation that I've talked about on the football side with James Laurinaitis. Everybody remembers James Laurinaitis, but it's even different with Laurinaitis. Laurinaitis is closer connected to his playing days than Chris Gent is. James Laurinaitis was much more successful in terms of his personal career as a player than Chris Gent was, even with Chris Gent having a ring with the Rockets. So I just fail to see what the hook is there other than, he's a former Buckeye. I mean, yes, he would understand the position of where basketball is going to ride at Ohio State year in and year out, and that's called after football. But I don't know necessarily why anybody is going to, any recruit is going to be like, I was considering Duke and UNC and Alabama and some of these other programs, but I'm going to go to Ohio State for Chris Gent. They don't know who he is. So I don't see anything there. And the thing is Chris Gent's last foray into college basketball, things have changed a lot. He may have no interest. He may have no interest in dealing with how college basketball is put together now. Have a sweet ride over there, live in LA and dealing with all that, all of that good stuff. So I don't know. I'm not trying to be contrarian. I'm just trying to have the conversation. I'm just trying to figure out why Chris Gent should be on any list other than the fact that he is a former Buckeye. Because how is it any different than Scooney Penn or Michael Redd? I mean, at least, Michael Redd, the in-state type of situation and everything else around Columbus. I mean, yes, Gent is coaching at this point, but I don't see anything there that is better than going out and getting a known quantity who is a head coach somewhere else in the collegiate game, who's out recruiting kids, who's out working in the weeds, working in the muck that is college athletics today. That is the pool that you have to play in. That is the pool that has to be addressed, unless you are absolutely getting some sort of home run type of hire. And I just don't see Chris being that guy. Super chat here from Omar Austin. Who replaces him in the interim? I have not had a chance to look at my email or anything like that. I would assume Jake Diebler. I'm looking to see if I even have an email yet. Again, that is part of the issue when you immediately go on the air. You don't even have all of your ducks in a row. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to assume Diebler. Steve wants to go get Mark Few or pull Jay Wright out of retirement. Why, Gonzaga is a basketball school. Why would Mark Few want to go to a place where he's underneath the cover at a football school? Why would Jay Wright want to necessarily go to Ohio State? Steve may love Ohio State, and Brad may love Ohio State, and Sean may love Ohio State, and I may love Ohio State, or whatever that may be. But where does Ohio State basketball really rank in the hierarchy of jobs? If we're being honest, where does it rank? Where does it rank in the Big Ten? Where does it rank nationally? Why the belief that Ohio State can go out there and be able to get whoever the hell it wants to get? I haven't seen any reason why that's the case. I don't know why that would be the case. So, and I know that, Steve isn't necessarily swinging for the absolute fences and putting the top names out there. But why is Jay Wright suddenly going to give up retirement to go and fix a program, not maintain a program, build and fix, or fix and build? I guess you have to fix it and then fix what you got and then build off of it a program. So I don't know, unless it's like, well, I love a challenge. I love puzzles. I've been working on this damn Rubik's Cube for 6 years, and if that's the case, then more power to you, and then you go there. But again, I don't think Ohio State could outpay pretty much anybody it wants to, if it wanted to. For the attendance that I've seen at Value City Arena, I'm not going out and making the highest cash dollar offer that I can for the attendance that I've seen. There are more people that I've seen complaining about Ohio State on social than I've seen in butts and seats at Value City Arena. You can't make investments if you don't expect to recoup them, and you don't make it just dollar for dollar. You want to make money on your money. And Ohio State's paying out $14 million allegedly to Chris Holtmann as part of his buyout. So again, I don't know why you can sit there and necessarily say that it's a case of being able to go and pull Jay Wright out of retirement. I mean, Jay Wright and Chris Holtmann get along pretty well. Ohio State just dumped Chris Holtmann. Jay Wright is a grown-up. He understands it's the nature of the business, but why does he suddenly sit there and say, well, I'm just going to go to Ohio State? I don't know. We're going to take this to 1 o'clock because I have a meeting at 1:30 and I need about a half hour to get my voice back. So we will keep going through here. Let me make sure I haven't missed any other super chats. CT Foster saying Adam Jardy, who's with the Columbus Dispatch, report saying 2 candidates internally being considered in the interim. There you go. We'll get a little bit more as that comes on. This show was never meant to be that we're going to have every last bit of information, as I'm down to 22%. So if my computer craps out before I crap out on the show, apologies there. I just never got plugged in. But you got to kind of just figure out what's going to happen there. Lucas wants to go get Jay Wright. I like Jay Wright. I think he's a hell of a coach. Everything he did at Villanova, he's a class act. Is Jay Wright necessarily looking to come out of retirement? Again, you're out for a year and maybe the bug bites you a little bit or whatever, but I don't see today, an hour into this news, the hook to make that happen. It really kind of feels like when John Gruden was mentioned for every coaching vacancy for years. Well, he's the biggest, best name out there that's not doing anything right now. So let's attach him to this job. Let's attach him to that job and this job over here. I think that Jay Wright has kind of become that. Now, if I go and do some reading and I see Jeff Goodman say, oh, keep an eye out on Jay Wright, then I will come right back on the air at whatever point and say, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. So I should have listened. I should have never doubted you. But as it is right now, I don't know necessarily why Jay Wright is jumping on that job. I mean, yes, Ohio State, there are kids in Ohio. Ohio State has money. Ohio State can have fan interest if the team is successful. Ohio State still plays in that god-awful mausoleum that you're never going to get any juice in there. I mean, the only juice that's been in there this year has been when the women's team has played, when Ohio State beat Iowa and Caitlin Clark, and you've got a women's game coming up here against Nebraska soon. Hell, I remember not all that long ago, people were ready to run Kevin McGuff out of town, and he's got that team playing very well right now on the women's side. So, again, I don't know. We'll kind of go through some of that. Odysseus says they should hire me. Hell no. Hell no. Michael says that Chris Gent was one hustler of a player. He'd know the game well. What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? I mean, what does that have to do with being a great head coach? I'm not gonna belabor the point. I'm not gonna put people on blast. That's one way to really F up your viewers. Start putting people on blast. Oh, what the hell are you talking about? They don't come back, and then you wonder why you're just talking to yourself. I just don't know. I just don't know why that's an answer. Sean Duffy thinks that Ohio State is a top 15 job. I do not. I do not. I think there are a lot of basketball-only jobs out there. I think there are a couple jobs maybe in the Big Priest. Yes, the Big East. But the Catholic schools of the Big East that in terms of amongst basketball types where there is no football to compete with, where everything is about basketball, I just don't know. Unless Sean Duffy is saying top 15 in terms of the Big Ten, then absolutely Ohio State is a top 15 job in the Big Ten. Even the 18-team Big Ten, Ohio State is a top 15 job. And there could be people who are going to come out and it's like, wow, Noon's really down on the basketball program. No, I'm just a realist. I think Ohio State is a top 30 job. I think Ohio State is a top 20. I think Ohio State's a top 30 job. If I see Ohio State pump more into it, then I might sit there and move the number up a little bit. But again, you play in the worst arena in the conference, far and away. I've not been to all of them. But I've been to at least half of them. Value City Arena, in terms of game day experience, is the worst arena imaginable for basketball. It's too big. PSLs, you have student butts all in corners and everything else. I know that they have the area now behind the benches that they put students in. They have to tarp off some stuff because damn those students for standing up and blocking people. I understand you have to have PSLs to be able to pay bills and everything else, but it is not a good venue to watch basketball. And it's not a matter of if you brought in Jay Wright or Jesus or whoever, I don't know. They're not going to be able to change that. They're not going to be able to say, I'm going to do this, but you've got to be serious and you've got to tell these people who paid a one-time upfront PSL thing and then a licensing fee yearly that they have to move to, up 40 rows. But again, I don't know what the draw is for those top coaches. So I don't know. Let me keep scrolling through here. Again, I'm going to I think we're getting caught up. RM is saying no mid-major coach again. Ohio State had 2 straight mid-major coaches go P5 or go home. So damn that Thad Matta. They had some success under Thad Matta. I don't think it's a matter of that if you get a mid-major coach that you're wrong. You just got to get the right mid-major coach and be able to keep putting gas on the fire. I could go out and show you a lot of P5 coaches that suck. And that classification shouldn't mean anything. And the thing is that P5 or P4 does not matter when it comes to basketball. It doesn't matter. It's majors and mid-majors and everything else. And there are going to be people that are considered, that are still majors that aren't necessarily in a Power 4 conference. So it's about fit. It's about being the right guy. It's not about where you work, where you're working now or where you worked previously. Show me your track record. Show me your plan. Show me how you're going to wake an Ohio State program that has been dormant for 4 years now. 3 years, 4 years, whatever. Again, as I said, 2020, Ohio State would have made the tournament as a 4 or 5 or something like that. I mean, probably one of the better rankings of a Holtmann-led team. So I don't know. Let me just go here. Larry says Jerome Tang from K-State would be a good hire. There you go. Lisa Sims, how long is this going to take? I think you can't hire somebody right now. Let's just say, there's Joe Blow from University of X. You can't go out and announce Joe Blow is taking the Ohio State job. It's going to sit there and just make everything janky at University of X. People are not going to leave because of that. People want to sit there and finish off the journey. They want to be fair to their current team. If you have a coach that sits there and just stabs a knife in the back of his team, it's like, see ya, and leaves, is that the guy you want leading your program? So this is going to be something that's going to have to go until after the season, but you have an opportunity to be able to figure some things out. Larry says there are a lot of small major colleges that we could attract with more money. Yeah, I mean, the money is great. You can buy goods and services with it. You can buy food. You can get a bigger house. You can get a better car. I love money. I don't have any money, but I mean, I love money. I don't want to be the basketball coach. I promise you that. I do not want to be the Ohio State basketball coach. But you just have to kind of see what's there. But it's going to be nobody's going to be happy with whoever's hired. I mean, there are going to be some people who will be happy, but you're not going to make everybody happy. You go out and get a big name. Oh, they're just out there headline chasing. You go out and you get a smaller name. They didn't make enough of an impact. They didn't make a splash hire. You know, it is a no-win situation with all of that. But I'm going to have to do some reading on this. We're going to have more shows on it. I'm going to probably be live again tomorrow. I don't know if I necessarily want to do my full hour on basketball, but you know, we're going to, you know, we'll get there. I'm at 1. I don't know what's being here. Matthew Miller, they better fire that clown. We look so Chris Holtmann has been relieved of his duty. So I know you're probably late to the game, but yes, so we're fine. And there's no reason. He's gone. You tip your hat. You thank him for the 7 years. I don't understand sitting there flipping a guy off as he's walking out the door. It is what it is, and now you move forward. Speaking of moving forward, though, we're going to move forward with the day. I got a show that I got to jump on here in a little bit. We do not know who the interim is. Keep it locked into BuckeyeHuddle.com, and we will keep you updated as these things are going on. I will try to start working on a coaching hot board. I need to start talking to some people. And so I'm talking to you. I can't be talking to others. So let me go. Let me see what I can find out. Talk to you very soon.